Good evening, one and all. So I thank the organizers for providing me the opportunity to interact with you and also take this topic, class on this topic. So today we are discussing topic titled Common Psychiatric Disorders in Childhood and Adolescence. So myself, Rajendra, I am Assistant Professor in Department of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry. So when it comes to common psychiatric disorder in childhood and adolescent, in a previous session, we had discussed about developmental disorders. So in this session, I try to give an overview of common disorders in the children. So overview in the sense, the extent of problem, the ongoing situation and what can be expected. Third, how we can easily, and there is a need to recognize children with emotional and behavioral issues in the early age, and early recognition, how it will be helpful, and what is the mode of treatment that has been given to them. So 40% of our national population is below 18 years. So 16% of global burden disease happens because of mental health in middle childhood and adolescence. In India, we don't have a vast and robust study which can give clear epidemiological figures regarding child mental health issues. However, a few studies have been done at community level and at school level. When you do a study at school level, you will find higher rates of difficulties or mental health issues when it compared to the home or community. And there are three stakeholders who one can approach doing the epidemiological study: teachers, parents, and children. So doing or involving all the three and doing a large scale prevalence or epidemiological study is quite a challenge. And yes, in coming days we need, but what existing small studies at community level share is that the mental health issues are between 6 to 12%, means 1 in 100, 10 in 100. So 10 in 100 means 1 in 10. So when it comes to categories of disorders, there are three: developmental, behavioral, and emotional. Developmental, in the last session, we tried to cover regarding intellectual disability and learning disorder. Today, our focus will be to cover behavioral disorders and emotional disorders. So behavioral disorders are those where a child or an adolescent can't follow the expected behavior in the expected context. It may be school, home, or even the social situation or in the society. So under behavioral disorders, we have disorders has attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, oppositional defiant disorder, and conduct disorder. Coming to emotional disorders, there are two categories. One is related to depression and another is related to anxiety. There are a subset of disorders called as somatoform disorders, adjustment disorders, or stress-related disorders, which also come under emotional disorders. So you can see that in school-age children, the attention deficit hyperactivity prevalence is 5 to 7%. Anxiety is around 13%. Depression is around 5%. So as we don't have a robust study even now regarding child mental health, you can look at the factors in this slide where a child grows, the child development will be determined are determinants, protective and risk factors, which will enhance the protective factors will enhance the healthy development. The risk factors will increase the mental health concerns. So you can see that as the globalization is getting, uh, means as India is getting globalized, there are many protective factors which are getting diluted, especially the parents' child time, the parenting practices, the traditional style which had a way to relax or way to have a hope, way to interact. So decrease in spiritual or religious practices, even confusion in cultural identities. So these are the protective factors which are on the decline. On the other hand, there is urbanization, there is increased competition in academics, there is everyone is spending much more time with technology, gadgets, and there is component of social isolation everyone is facing, and much more during the corona period. And families are becoming nuclear and both parents appears to be working. So these are the risk factors which are getting increased. So all these bring out or predispose a child for increased occurrence of depression, anxiety, and stress-related disorders. So now we know that there is quite a large number of children who need help from the early age, and in coming days the number may also go up. There is a high possibility. So there is a need for early recognition and providing the help for these children. So this slide shows that what children felt about their parental engagement. And it was not a huge sample. It was around 1,500 students they have surveyed. So you can see that around 21% students in India felt that the parental engagement are not adequate for them. Means 20% feel that their parents are not able to give adequate time that they need. So this is a few years ago. So you can understand the situation. Now, when it comes to parenting, and we also discussed in the slide that the parenting styles are changing, there is only one style of parenting which can have a positive effect on child development, so that child can grow confident and also strong. So that is called as authoritative, where you need to spend time at least an hour with the child above 5 years. Below 5 years, you need more than 3-4 hours. Then you need to play with them so that you stay connected. You can imagine that you have a friend. So that friend is your friend because of the time you spent with him. So the time and the exchange of emotions or positive emotions builds the relation. Second is, the parent need to apply the limits for technology, limits for the knowledge, limits for the activity, limits for what they should learn, what they should not learn. That age appropriate limit should be applied. Within that limits, child will have freedom. Like for example, to explain this, for a 3-year-old, you will put a circle and ask him to draw something what he likes. Means you are giving a layout. Inside that he has a freedom. For a middle childhood, you can involve the child in making a day schedule, and you can decide what all the components should be there, and he can decide the order of them, or even the what you can say, which one or how he will carry out those activities within that limit. So this limits will help them to not to learn what is not expected out of their age. At the same time, freedom encourages them to develop a sense of decision making. It's a process where they can think for the options and decide. So imagine that growing society, growing globalization, nuclear family, increased stress in parenting. So, and parents need to spend time, minimum of 1 or 2 hours with every child to keep the relation up. And also they need to constantly work on what child should learn or not learn. And then they should give a space for the child to decide. So it needs time. So this is the one type of parenting where both the parents should agree on. So as in this era, you can see that many parents are not able to follow this, and they tend to follow a permissive kind of parenting where they can spend much time with the child. There is no limit for anything what child wants or demands, and everything what he needs has been granted. And also poor decision making capacity. Sometimes it may also lead to child to develop a sense of entitlement. A Greek philosopher says that pampering is the biggest evil. Pampering the children is the biggest evil that can be done in a society. So the other two styles of parenting are authoritarian and neglectful. Neglectful means you are not giving time or even any direction to the child. In authoritarian, there is no warmth. You are controlling all the child's behaviors. There is no space for decision making. These children also tend to perform less at the lower level, and they tend to have lower self-esteem and also anxiety issues when it compared to authoritative parenting. So until now, what we discussed regarding parenting and changing pattern of the determinants of child development were for the normal children, means that 80 to 85% who fall under the normal curve. So now we are moving ahead to understand two sets of disorder. One is behavioral and second is emotional. So you all know that there is something called as normal curve for every parameter or every variable you measure, and there is an outlier of the normal curve. It may be height. So height and weight, or even the measures which can be measured in the instruments, are quite easy to pick up. But what about emotions? So do they have a spectrum of normal curve? Are there children who have concerns related to emotion and their regulation? So if they have a concern, what is that they need in their care? So we have 4 emotions. Happiness. There are good ways and bad ways to achieve it. And the way the child learns, as he grows, he will try to seek those ways of happiness. There is sadness and fear, and there is anger. So when it comes to behavioral disorder, it focuses on those children who are prone for anger or irritability, or they have less control about their behaviors or making decisions. Not because they want, it is because of their brain development, they have those concerns. So you can see that there are 3 disorders: attention deficit disorder, oppositional defiant disorder, and conduct disorder. So conduct disorder I may not cover in much, but I will allude to ADHD and oppositional defiant disorder. The cause you can see can be prenatal substrate, postnatal neglect can also lead, low birth weight, or preterm birth. So irritability estimates is 70-80%, but currently the available genetics can help us to understand the 22%, like what are the genes that may be contributing. As all psychiatric disorders are having involvement of multiple genes, it is not easy to pinpoint a gene for a specific disorder. So what happens in these children? So you can see that the cortical maturation which happens in a normal children versus those children with ADHD. So you can see that in the prefrontal cortex is the area which helps us to regulate our behavior. You can see a gap from normal children or typically developing children to the children who have ADHD. And because of this, they tend to have less control. So what is the impact of being anger prone or irritability prone, or one who can't regulate his behavior or emotions accordingly? It's like a fan doesn't have a regulator. We can vary a speed of fan between 1 to 5 based on the weather. Too hot, 5. Little bit hot, 1. So like that, as child grows, 5 and onwards, child will be able to regulate his body by seeing and learning. So in spiritual or religious places, the body of everyone of us will be in the speed of 1. In the school, it is at the 2. In home, it is at 3. In a function, it may be at 4. In a field, it is at 5. But if I take children who don't have this control, for them, all situations are playground. So they will be running around even in the class. They will be running around even in the field. For them, thinking and responding is difficult. They will respond immediately for anything and everything. So they will tend to get fights. So what feedback that brain gets from the early age? You are naughty, you are bad, stop your hands, stop your legs, don't shake them. How many times I have told? So the same in the school. So imagine that boy's self has been always connected to a negative comment since the early age. It will definitely affect their self-image and self-esteem if it is not addressed. So what happens in children who have this regulation deficits is parents also don't know. They are not willingly do anything wrong. Because of lack of awareness, they try to control, they try to plead, they try to explain, they try to request. But they also don't know it is because of a developmental concern. So they tend to use coercion or punishment as a way to get the things work done from him. As coercion gets used for managing the hyperactivity or his behavioral issues, relationship get troubled. Maybe when the child is around adolescents or late adolescents, the child will start using this coercion back to the parents. So you can understand how not detecting a child who is having difficulty in regulation of their emotions and behaviors can affect their self-image and their relation with parents and even with self. So when it comes to hyperactivity, you can see that in the early age, hyperactivity will be prominent. In the middle childhood, hyperactivity and inattention will be prominent. In the later childhood or in the adolescence, the inattention tends to persist, impulsivity tends to persist, hyperactivity to some extent get reduced. So all these are the comorbidities which can co-occur with child with ADHD. You can see that learning disorder is around 40-50%. So even many other disorders can co-occur. So we have discussed one condition in behavioral disorder where they have deficits to regulate their attention or regulate their behavior. So if you want to remember a child with ADHD or the symptoms of ADHD or the criteria for ADHD, you can remember a child sitting with hand closed and a mouth shut. So the criteria for hyperactivity are: he can't sit at a place, he can't keep his mouth shut, means he will be talking more, his hands will not be able to stay calm, he is always on a go. So these are all the hyperactivity symptoms. Impulsivity is acting without thinking. Usually they interrupt. Before they have listened, they will answer. Before there is a turn, they can't wait. Before there is a turn in conversation, they will intrude. So all these welcomes negative comments from all atmospheres they grow. When it comes to inattention, attention is a process where you can focus your senses to carry out a work. So it may be auditory attention to listen how many items it has been told for me to bring, or it may be visual attention to carry out a task, or the attention is much and larger aspect needed to plan a day and execute. Imagine that attention is deficit. You can't listen completely what has been told. You can't organize yourself. You are messy. So what it invites you. So that is in the ADHD part. Oppositional defiant disorder are disorders where there is irritable mood, there is oppositionality or argumentative nature, and they have a tendency to keep grudges. So this can happen in situations where parents pursue and child has not learned the regulations of anger with age, which is normally expected. Our child may have uh, hyperactivity disorder and so those who have this and those things are not addressed. Basically, as we grow, we are told how to keep our body fit by healthy nutrition and exercises. But because it is mental health, these children will not be told how to manage their anger, how to manage their behavior, how to take assistance for their daily planning. So that is the difference. But it can impact their self-image, their relationships, and predispose them for many other adult mental health disorders. So we have tried to cover two behavioral disorders. Now moving on to emotional disorders, which deals with two emotions, fear and sadness. So stress is quite unavoidable. It comes from work or achievement related aspect or relation related aspect. In relationships, if you lose someone, if there is ongoing problem with two people like parents or with a friend, or you don't have a skills to relate to others very well because it has not been taught, those children tend to have risk to develop depression. These days, the focus on perfectionism, focus on competitiveness, focus on marks, sleep irregular patterns, and lastly, inadequate learning of emotional regulation skills lead or dispose a child to develop depression. In adolescents, the third common cause for mortality across the world is suicide. So in olden days, it was very rare that you would have heard a child or children committing suicide. These days, you can see plenty, not plenty, but many which are getting reported. So depression is most common problem in adolescents. Next is coming to anxiety or fear related disorders. There is a difference between anxiety and fear. Anxiety is that you are presuming a threat because of which you are feeling uncomfortable or troubled. When it comes to fear, you have a threat in front of you and you are reacting to it. When that reaction gets exaggerated, then you call it as phobia. So fear, real threat, and there is your reaction. When it is in excess, it can call as phobia. When it comes to anxiety, it is that you are presuming many untoward situations or occurrences or uh, problems which are not expected, but there is no control, which leads you to feel anxious. So you will develop bodily symptoms in the form of autonomic nervous system affecting the sympathetic system, and you also will have cognitive symptoms leading to fatigue, somatic symptoms. So last is conversion and somatoform disorders. When emotion becomes overwhelming and they have less capability to express or even feel, uh, then they have difficulty of cultural acceptance that those symptoms of sadness or anxiety can be shared. Bodily symptoms are well expected in Indian scenario or in many other cultures. Headache, pain in stomach, or pain in the cardiac region, like in the chest. So these are all symptoms where they are persisting without any physical explanation. They have been adequate evaluation. So there is a emotion which is related to stress, which can be anxiety or sadness behind those disorders, but they are not upfront, which can be visible. But these symptoms tend to lead to dysfunction. So as in depression, it is a state where your body energy levels will go down. You will have no enjoyment or pleasure in what you do, and in the last, you don't what you can say, you will have negative, you will feel sad for much part of the day. So coming to the major symptoms for sadness, it is that the child mood is sad, for irritable for much time, and there is less pleasure in the activities which were pleasurable, and the energy levels appears to be low. So these are the three major symptoms. Minor symptoms are related to cognition, where you have poor ability to concentrate or make decisions. You tend to have negative views about yourself. You may feel guilty, you may feel worthless, you may feel hopeless. Physically, there may be decreased or increased sleep, there may be decreased or increased appetite. So based on the number of symptoms, we tell the severity of episode as mild, moderate, and severe. So coming to the next aspect, which co-occurs with depression, is suicidality. So you can see that the stressors interact with the predisposing factors, which can be family, psychological, or biological, which can lead to disorders, and it can lead to suicidal behavior. Even without having a diagnosable disorder, the stressful situation can predispose someone to a suicidal risk. So what is that which is expected at the immediate situation is that you need to ensure safety, you need to ensure 24 hours monitoring, you need to educate them that this is not their fault, they are at a state of emotion which is controlling them, they need to seek help, address any medical issues regarding poisoning or something which you need to do as a first aid. So what education you need to give to these children? They will ask that, will it help me to pass my exam? Will it solve my problem with my parents? Or will it solve my problem with my friend? So what answers we can give? So we can tell them that because there is a low level of chemical of the continuous stress, giving a medication which can increase that will help you to feel and think better. And once you have that ability, you can deal with the stressful situation. So that will help you to suffer less and get better. So short-term management will focus on resolving a stressful situation. Medications will focus on helping them to get adequate sleep, and also that is benzodiazepines will be used for adequate sleep. And SSRIs are the common drugs, means selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. They will take around 3 to 6 weeks for them to enhance their energy levels and their mood so that they can deal with the situation. In the long-term management, not the life, long-term management, as I said, those psychological risk factors like perfectionism, irregular sleep-wake cycle, or there is emotional regulation issues, or there is skills deficits to relate or interpersonal relation, those will be addressed. So we dealt with symptoms of sadness, depression, and we also dealt with suicidal behavior and suicidality. Now let us move ahead to fear or anxiety. You can see with age, we need to learn to control all these negative emotions. It may be anger, it may be sadness, it may be fear. And everything should be taught to us. So as I said, all children don't fall under normal curve. As I said, few may be predisposed for anger or may have self-regulation deficits. Similarly, children are predisposed to fear, what we call it as behavioral inhibition. Their autonomic nervous system is more active compared to the rest 85% or 90%. So children who have this fear predisposition need to master the fears according to the age, separating from the mother, facing the animals, or the threatful situations like darkness. In the early childhood, it is about becoming independent and carrying out his activity, separating from the mother or interacting with a stranger. At mid childhood, it is more about that situations in the environment that can bring you fear and you need to master. In the adolescence, it is much more to do with your social appeal, our social ability, our social interaction. So all these stages, the child needs to be discussed, explained, modeled, and encouraged to get out of them. If they were not addressed, or if there is a family stress and children who are fear prone, or even those who are normal, they can't be able to manage those situations which can bring them difficulty situations or fearful situations, and they start worrying a lot. Imagine a mother who has anxiety disorder. What will happen to his child? Will he not learn anxiety? Imagine a father with anger issues. He is getting modeled by the anger behaviors in the family. Will he not do that? A child sees both the parents quarreling to resolve a problem. So he will not try the same way to solve a problem with his friend. So what I want to say is, when a fear which is imagined and it is excessive and it is affecting your body and autonomic nervous system and it is in excess, and if it is in across situations, you can call it as generalized anxiety disorder. If it is in the context of separation, you call it as separation anxiety disorder. If it is in the social situation, it can be called as social anxiety disorder. I want to make a point here regarding specific phobias. Injection fear, fear of injection or fear of cockroach can alter one student's career or one student's treatment seeking. He may avoid going to hospital. He may avoid taking biology. So can you understand how a small fear can also impact a lifelong decision? So identifying the fear-prone children, giving additional care for that anxiety to overcome is much needed. So I will run through the symptoms. As I said, separation anxiety is related to a attachment figure, mother or father, where they feel imaginarily fearful that something will happen to them. This continuous fear in their mind will lead to troubled sleep, difficult or related dreams. They can't stay away from that figure, and in this state of anxiety they tend to experience physical symptoms, and because of this anxiety they refuse to go to school. That is in the context of separation. So the DSM says that even adults have this disorder, and they have recognized this presence even in the adults. When it comes to generalized anxiety, the theme is that every aspect the child tends to worry. So usually children tend to worry more about academics, their performance, their acceptance, and also the family health, family finances during their adolescence. So because of this constant continued worries they can't control, they tend to have bodily symptoms of tightness, tiredness, and difficulty in sleep. And they tend to have negative views or negative difficulties to manage the negative situations, because they tend to get into this loop of thinking. Social anxiety disorder, as I said, it is specific to the situation. In that situation, he evaluates the child, he or she evaluates him in a negative way. I may speak ugly, I may look ugly, they may judge me. So the moment that fear starts in the brain, is autonomic symptoms of heart beating, tremors, those things will start. Then again the fear will increase, again the autonomic symptoms will increase. You can call it as fear cycle. And that makes him to avoid the social situations. Next is, as I said, there is a specific exaggerated fear to a specific situation. It may be animal, it may be an environmental situation, or it may be injection or blood. And because that it creates that excessive fear, these people tend to avoid those situations. So now coming to what happens to those who are little bit anger prone, or who can't control them less, or who are little bit fearful or shy. So being non-judgmental is difficult, especially in the competitive world. So common things which occur are ridiculing, comparison, blame, humiliation, scolding, pressurizing, and they will be labeled as a child's fault or lazy. So you can understand that what happens to these children who are fear prone or anger prone, and they tend to listen to this. So now, as I said, the experiences what we give from the ear, from the nose, from the eyes, from the touch, that the child has abilities, child can do good, child can face the situation, child can control anger, comes under socio-emotional competence of self-esteem. And if we give a blow to them, their self-esteem will be shattered. Academics is one part of self-esteem. Socio-emotional component is the important part of self-esteem. Physical components and their fitness also are the components. So the socio-emotional components can be trained only with time, with love, with discussion, with additional attention. So if child has a problem, then receiving the negative negative words or negative feedbacks will be their process of their development. So when we assess these children, we need to talk to child or adolescent and listen to him or understand him. Usually children will not open up. So you may need to start with paper, pencil, or drawing, then they may think of sharing things. Especially in middle childhood, they will think, if I tell about my mummy, father about something wrong about my dad or my mother in front of doctor, how bad they will feel. How can I tell this? So you need to address those concerns so that the child can share and then understand the symptoms. We need to assess the family, especially the relation between the father and mother and other caregivers who stay in the family, and also the way in which they are doing the parenting to the child, and are both parents are in agreement with that. Next, we need to look at school environment. When it comes to school environment, the academics and the peer relation and the student-child interaction. Then we can also look out for any medical issues which can bring out autonomic nervous systems or sadness because of endocrine changes. So what is the treatment that needs to be done? If we can identify those children who have difficulties in self-regulation, or we are predisposed to anger, or those who are predisposed to fear, and if parents can manage their stress better and then give adequate times to children so that they can develop as adequate or competent socio-emotional development, yes, many things can be prevented. So as in these disorders, which tend to occur even in the presence, predominant work is focused on giving an education about those conditions which are affecting their emotions and behaviors, training them in the skills to acquire and master those deficits, and also the ways in which they can plan their life with the deficits, educating the parents regarding the additional time and care they need to invest to help to deal with the children with this anger or self-regulation issues, or anxiety or sadness related issues. If at all there are concerns regarding parent relationship that needs to be addressed. Last is medication, where if the symptoms are of severe degree and that can't be managed by education, skill training of the child, and support from the parents, the medication will be introduced. So in depression, moderate to severe level, in severe anxiety or multiple comorbidities, like there are multiple anxiety disorders, then we tend to use SSRIs. In behavioral disorders, when the therapy has been not effective or not been able to bring a change, or their hyperactivity is so severe, we use medications to bring down those hyperactivity. Those medications will enhance the neurochemicals in the frontal lobe, which can help them to better regulate themselves. So what can be told for management of anger? For anger issues, the child need to acquire the skill. Child need to talk to himself that whenever he is angry, he need to relax. In a step-by-step fashion, he should write. He should learn steps. I should stop when I am angry. I should plan what I should do. In those plans, maybe 3 or 4, I need to evaluate which I can execute. Then I need to act and then see what is the reaction. And I need to learn this process in every context. And each step takes few months to years. Anger is not the solution. Fighting is not the solution. I need to use assertion or humor in situations where they can provoke me into the anger. Applying them and generalizing them also is important. Then cognitive and neuropsychological training is that you will help a child to give a checklist before going to school. And then before leaving the school, he will check those items are there in the bag. The child who has difficulty in organization, this aid will help him a lot to improve his organization skills. So this is way in which we need to train or give the skills to child to learn to manage anger and also manage the situations which are between a friend or in the social situation which can bring them anger and how they can manage. So when it comes to behavioral disorders, parent management training is what commonly advised. So this is what is now required for each and every household for parents. First is having a warm relation with the child by spending the time with him, appreciating, giving a feedback for that you felt good while playing with him. So this continued play, relaxation and appreciation, acceptance will keep the bond strong. Next is you need to demand for positive behaviors. You need to tell that this much time you need to do this much time you need to do this much time you need to do this. You are nice, but I want this to be done. Even as an adult, we need to punch for our jobs. Why we are doing it? Because we need to be monitored. We need to be asked. So there is a need for demanding good behaviors. Third step is that this is no, this can't be done. Those things should be firmly told. Means this is expected, this is not expected. These expectations can be set only when you have a healthy relation, and also it can be reduced by increasing the acceptable behavior. Then coming to reducing the unacceptable behavior. So what are the unacceptable behaviors? Where the child is aggressive more than the required to that context, or is creating some problem. For example, a child goes to a shop and father feels fearful that he will go, he's 7-year-old. When he goes to shop, if the toy is not given, he will lie around and then he will cry, so that he will end up paying around 5,000 for the toy. So basically what is the problem here? The child doesn't know to manage the anger. So how to manage this unacceptable behavior? So you need to help him to solve. You need to tell that last time you did, is it right or wrong? Child will definitely say that it is right, it is wrong. Then you will ask, okay, how to work on this? For example, today or tomorrow we will go there. If at all you, I will give you this 5 rupees or 10 rupees, in that you need to manage. Child will agree. If at all you become angry or you throw a tantrum, what should I do? Then you make an agreement that we will take away the 10 rupees and we will walk back from the shopping directly. Then the child has thought of the situation. Child has thought that what is that he can be acceptably doing in that context. Child has decided that what action will be taken if that behavior become unacceptable. So in this process, you are helping, preparing the child to think for him, to think for managing it. And if you follow those situations and follow those advices, it will be helpful for the child to unlearn those behaviors. So this is what we can say. And many times we can use taking away the rewards which they usually get. Like if the child takes 1 hour of TV, you can take 15 minutes or half an hour of TV back. Like that, we can take something which is already positive if there is any untoward behavior which is expected. And that should be done prior discussion, and then it should be consistently implemented. Last but the least, ignorance is the major way to change someone. When there are minor issues like squirming, fidgetiness, or rocking, which they can't control, in those situations, and the child is throwing tantrum and it is in the home situation and you need not worry about it, that can also reduce those behaviors. As I said, we need to plan for those situations where situations can bring problem. There will be a loop in which that communication will happen with a child and a parent. That patterns should be recognized and addressed. Coming to sadness and anxiety, cognitive behavioral therapy is the approach of training the child, where the child has been taught behaviors and thinking patterns so that can help them to feel better and manage their sadness and fear. Here, the therapist will help them to understand, recognize the unhealthy anxiety and sadness related behaviors and thinking patterns, and how they can affect the maintenance of those emotional states. I will give one example that 95% I get, that is good. If I get 94%, it is waste. So I will commit suicide. Means if that perfectionism and achievement orientation has been put into the mind, child will have a very black and white thinking. It is yes, it is no. There is no in between. So that can definitely predispose this pattern of thinking can definitely predispose a child to feel depressed. A child may catastrophize, means there is some small problem, but the child may have a tendency to worry that there may be major problem, significant problem, it may affect my life. That is exaggerated way in which that situation has been processed, and that pattern should be recognized and healthy pattern should be taught. So in context of India, in lack of psychotherapists, involving parents, giving them adequate skills are major important factors. So an example for helping a child to unlearn or to overcome their fear or anxiety is that first aspect is you will help them to describe their fear, describe their expectations which are not realistic. Ask them how they affect their attitudes and actions, and how changing their attitude and action can help them to overcome that fearful situation. Once you give inputs of positive attitudes and actions that can help them to face it, then you will reward them, they themselves will reward, then the situations and the level of feeling frightened will also gradually reduce. The expectations that something untoward will happen, those also will get reduced. So by describing, the child will understand about his bodily symptoms. By describing, he will understand his thinking related process. Then giving an attitude and a support to act on them, so that how, and discussing them how that change of attitude and action can help, prepares them. Once they do action and they feel rewarded for themselves and they are rewarded from the parents, they feel that they can manage a situation. So this is usually used for anxiety disorders. So if a parent can do this in a stepwise manner for any fearful situation, that can be useful. So as a child learns to manage a situation which can bring the sadness by solving the problem by around 9-10 years. So there are two ways in which you can solve a problem. One is problem-centric approach, where you can resolve by approaching and taking support. Second is emotional-centric approach, where you can't change the situation, you let out your emotions out. So to conclude, overall, what I want to say in this presentation is, as we learn ABCD, like that, we also learn to regulate anger, overcome fear, manage sadness, and to get happiness. That needs to be learned in the context of parental relation. Children who are predisposed, or who have less ability to regulate their anger, or who are more sensitive, are more fearful, are more predisposed for sadness, if they don't get adequate support, they may have a major impact on their development, their self-esteem, and in the later, it can lead to major mental health issues. The education of a child, training the skills, education of parents, helping them to train the skills are the important aspects. Medications are reserved for only very small part of population when the symptoms are very severe and not manageable. So parents need time, need to learn to manage stress and train the child to work on those predispositions they have. So early recognition of these problems, just an information, guidance may have a long lasting impact on child's self-esteem, self-image, and child and parent relation. And it can also prevent many mental health issues that can occur in adolescence or adulthood. So with this, I thank everyone for their active listening. So if any questions are there, I can take them for next 4-5 minutes. Thank you, one and all.
Good afternoon, sir.
Please.
I have seen among the school children, low self-esteem is a very common thing. Now, the causes can be many, but what ultimately we see is the low self-esteem. How do, as a teacher, we work on the kids so that we can improve the self-esteem of the children?
Yeah, so that's a important aspect Madam has asked. So I will go back to that slide. So you can see that child need to learn to appreciate himself. Child need to be appreciated by the parents and teachers on regular basis. So that appreciation child can get in academic aspects, in aspects regarding managing a social situation or their emotions, and also in physical activities. So those children who have low self-esteem, you need to figure out which component of these factors is leading to that. Or you can give a general understanding that these are the factors which can affect their confidence. And you can explain to the parents and the children that there is a process in which they also need to self-appreciate their positives, and parents also need to appreciate. Second important point is accepting those problems they have. Out of 100 10 children will have learning issues. So learning disorder is a biological condition. It may not go away. So helping the child to accept, parents accepting it and telling that it is not the child's fault can also help the child to bounce back on the self-esteem. So the household chores, the games, the social interactions, all these needs appreciation. How they interact with friends, how they solve problems with them, how they play together needs appreciation. So that can be at their self level, they can maintain a diary, they can write down their positive things, what they did in a daily basis, and they will appreciate themselves. Second, accept if they have any problem, that it is not their fault. Third, that reward or appreciation from parents and teachers in those positive qualities. What I want to say is, even a single grass is not of any use, means it is not waste, means any grass will also have, it will be useful. So what I'm trying to tell is each and every child has some or the other abilities. So helping them to recognize those abilities, working on them, appreciating those abilities by their self and by the family, enhancing them to manage their emotions, that will help them to develop the self-esteem. I hope I have answered the question which was raised.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes, madam.
I have a child in my school who his parents are complaining that he is addicted to his games. He is all the day he is on the screen watching YouTube videos, playing games, or doing some other activity online. So now parents have taken the mobile and laptop. He gets it only to attend the class. But whenever he takes the iPad now, he keeps on watching YouTube videos. So what means simple that he is addicted to on screen. So what can be done to help the child?
Yeah. Madam Jyotsna has asked a very contemporary and challenging question, even which can be more applicable during the COVID situation. Madam, we have a finance management plan. We have life insurance plan. We have educational plan. We have travel plan. The time has come where not only the children, even parents need to learn technology management plan. So technology management plan means what duration, for what purpose, and what content the technology will be used. It may be an iPad or it may be a mobile. You can educate their parents, even the child, that if he prays for God based on their religion, his calmness will increase. Killing one person on reality can put him to a lifetime jail. But in the games, killing is like a rewarding activity. For example, you kill someone, you will get points. You kill someone, you will earn money. Can you understand the impact it can make on their control of emotions? So this technology is addictive because of very fast returns. For example, we need to invest money in bank and they should pay back the double of amount in 1 year. That doesn't happen, but everyone need it. Like that, in these games, every movement they make in their hand, their score will increase, their performance will increase. They are learning violence, but they are feeling happy. So a strict plan, below 5 years, no screen, 5 to 10 years, 1 to 2 hours with and parental observation in the middle childhood. In the adolescence, there may be 2-3 hours, but there are already limits set regarding the risk which can involve in the aspect of relationship, boundary crossing, game addiction, and manipulation from others who are unknown, and a frequent discussion about the same. So as I said, a technology management plan is not only needed for the child, but even for parents. If they can implement, if they can manage, then definitely child will. We have in a house, a hall, a bedroom, a bathroom, a kitchen are separate places because of the privacy and secrecy that is involved in it. Mobile can take the work to home, friends to home, games to home, entertainments to home, or even to the toilet. So that boundaries and need is very much there for happy family. So parenting, advocacy for adequate time for parenting, relaxation methods for parents and children, their practices, and a technology management plan should be there. Thank you, Jyotsna madam, for that.
Thank
Hope I
you so
answered
much.
you.
It's really fruitful. It's really, I'm so thankful to you. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Okay. I thank, yeah, work from home is compulsory for parents also, anyone is necessary. Yes, I agree, madam. So we need to explain to the child that I am using this technology not for my entertainment purpose. for the job purpose. Beyond the job purpose, I will not use. So second, yes, that can put pressure on the parents because they can't socialize. They need to be with the gadgets all the time. As I said, that they need to have a stress management plan, that they need to practice yoga together. They need to have a lunch or dinner together. These two information, if you can give to any family, having dinner together, doing yoga or relaxation exercise in the morning together. It can be walking also. These two advices can help a family a lot. Sure. Thank you, one and all. Have a good day.